for me, the pull in leadership was that I wanted to be the leader that I never had. And so that allowed me the ability to adapt and grow into a place that one didn't exist until a handful of really great people recruited me into RS&H. But it also set me up to have those skills and the foundation of what my core beliefs were before I came here.
Welcome, everyone. We're back to another episode of AEC Perspectives by RS&H. I am your host, Rachel Moore, but this podcast is not about me, never was, never will be. It is about the topics we are bringing forth to you about the AEC industry. And today we have quite a roundup of speakers because it's very important that we have the right people in the room for what we're about to talk about. Today's topic is building the future, leadership, talent, and the evolving AEC workforce. Now, the people I'm about to introduce you to are leaders, particularly in RS&H. And if you're listening to this and you are in workforce of AEC industry, well, you'll find this very interesting because we're going to learn all about the ways that all these individuals are really trying to make that future happen. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce everyone here to the podcast. So first of all, we are welcoming Josh Gadsby. With over 30 years of industry experience, Josh is an accomplished senior construction manager within the RS&H Aviation Group, leading complex airfield projects across Texas. Having worked extensively within the transportation and commercial building segments, Josh excels at bridging design and field execution while providing strong leadership to a statewide team of aviation field representatives. He's adept at managing on-site activities, ensuring regulatory compliance, and fostering robust stakeholder relationships to deliver projects on time and within budget. That's a pretty tall order. His expertise in construction oversight and commitment to quality make him a valuable leader in the aviation construction sector. Josh, that was a mouthful, but I'm so happy to welcome you to the podcast.
On getting that out.
Well, congratulations on all you've accomplished, and we're going to hear more about that in today's podcast. This is going to be great. Well, next up, I have some more kind words for our next speaker, Kaan Akcay. Kaan joined RS&H as a senior recruiter in talent acquisition with nearly 20 years of experience leading and developing talent acquisition across various industries. Kaan recently worked at the Regional Transportation District, RTD, in Denver, Colorado. I know that. I'm from Denver, where he helped that agency expand services for its commuter rail division. Kaan was responsible for client management, strategic hiring, talent strategy, ATS implementation, inclusion and belonging initiatives, and training focused on best practices. Another mouthful of things that people are doing here. Before RTD, he worked at Orica, an Australia-based world leader in explosives, and at Freeport-McMoRan, a Fortune 250 mining company and the second largest in North America. Kaan is originally from the Philadelphia area and holds a bachelor's degree from Kutztown University of Pennsylvania. Kaan, another mouthful, but also lovely to welcome you to the podcast today.
Thank you, Rachel. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. And finally, I'm happy to introduce Michelle Price. Michelle serves as interior studio leader in RS&H's Denver office. She has 10 years of experience as an interior designer and supports efforts for the firm's national clients. Her experience includes serving as project manager and interior designer for corporate office facilities, healthcare facilities, aviation facilities, and retail banking projects. So she makes it look and feel the way it should. Michelle, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I am surrounded by leaders in this particular room that we're all in. But before we get started with our questions, I did want to help personalize y'all a little bit. I mean, look. You can read all these bios and it's all very impressive and I'm sitting among greatness. But I also want to get to know you as humans. So I'm going to ask each person, go around the room, what is your dream breakfast, your favorite breakfast you can have if you had no budget, no calories in mind, and you could be anywhere in the world? So Josh, I'm going to go to you first. What would you have for breakfast?
You just changed everything, but it was more than just breakfast a minute ago. So no budget. I think it would be on the beach in Hawaii, Loco Moco.
Ooh. What would you be having? Or do they have what would be? I've not been to
So
Hawaii,
Loco Moco
I'm
could
just
be a
curious.
combination of rice, eggs, and either sirloin, or it can be Spam, which would be really traditional. But it's the environment. Toes in the sand, palm trees.
That's right. Very nice. Yeah, that sounds glorious. Michelle, I'll go to you next. What would you be having for breakfast?
I'm thinking some like crab cake, eggs Benedict. Maybe, let's put it on the European, go for France, and embrace that.
I love it. Oh, that sounds, and I haven't had breakfast yet. This is a terrible idea to ask this
We're all
question.
hungry now.
That's right. Kaan, over to you. What about your breakfast?
Great question. I think my breakfast game's gotten pretty boring over the years. It's kind of shifted into the smoothie world, but if I had a choice to go back to it now and do anything I'd like, maybe it's something like more of a smorgasbord, type situation where you could just pick and choose whatever you want.
Dream scenario, right? Where it's like, well, this is what I'm feeling. I'm going over there. Ooh, that looks good. I'm picking it off. That lovely. So thank you all for, I appreciate that. I know I added a little twist of a challenge in there to make you kind of expand out to, oh my gosh, like I could literally transport anywhere. But next, we're going to transport us all back into this world of leadership and how it relates to workforce and talent and building the future. So I'm going to load up this first question. And Kaan, I'm actually going to go to you first with this one. What are some workforce challenges that you're seeing in your role, whether that's in recruiting or day-to-day management, just like kind of what's happening in that world right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Rachel. I mean, I think, the biggest challenge that we're facing right now is just fierce market competition. I mean, the fight for talent, especially at mid-level professionals, they're the most highest in demand in our industry. They are for RS&H, and that continues to be the biggest issue that we face. Every firm, every consulting firm in our industry is, facing the same uphill battle. We've got an aging workforce that it's, approaching retirement, and we're looking for the next generation of leaders to step in. And so, firms like RS&H and other industry leading firms have really stepped their game up. And, everybody's been paying attention to this growing trend. And really, it's the big elephant in the room. And I think that's probably the single biggest trend that I see as the biggest challenge that we're facing right now in the industry.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I have a feeling everyone listening or watching is nodding their heads, huh? I work in that too, and I'm feeling it. Josh, I see your head nodding
Yeah.
as well. And especially talking about your leadership, with the people you manage on site and things like that, what kind of challenges are you seeing?
It's a really big question with a lot of facets to it. Con hit it off really well. I think the twist that I would put on it, from where the rubber meets the road, where the craft is involved at the job level, is just a pure interest and desire to enter into a workforce that historically came through trades or interest in blue collar trades as a viable option. And as the drive for university and degrees became such a huge push through our education system, that waned over time. And so we're looking at the complexity of not only the aging workforce, but the lost legacy in what would be the one senior, one junior, the mentor through apprenticeship. And while we may emulate that still in the professional side, we're lacking a part of what is technical. And so I think it's really a huge opportunity for us to reevaluate how we look at hiring and what those skill sets are, and maybe what cross training may look like for professionals that may be interested in being exposed to the elements and spending time on site rather than being the technical piece that's pulling all the line work together and the heavy administrative load.
Really good point. I love that you talk even about the generational stuff in there too, which is super real. Michelle, I'm going to pivot over to you. I can only imagine that that might be one aspect to your challenges as well with how you're designing the offices and whatnot. But I'd love to hear your take too. What challenges are you really having to face today with workforce?
Absolutely. Kaan hit it the nail on the head. It's really recruiting and retaining those mid-level professionals. I think a lot of those coming into the workforce and maybe that have been here a few years, they might even be exploring other options outside of our industry, because now there are so many different avenues you could take as a young professional. All the things with AI changing and things like that, there's other things that might be pulling people away from being an architect or an engineer or an interior designer and bringing them into other fields even from our own.
Yeah, it does feel like you said, there's all these different draws, different aspects. It's complex, right? I feel like each of you really highlighted some areas where it's like, well, it's not just one single challenge. There's obviously a multitude, a tangled web, if you will, of really making this tough. Josh, I'm going to take this next question to you because I feel like we just talked about
Mhm.
challenges, but there's a way, at least one way to maybe mitigate that, and that is leadership. Man, I think we all can like relate to in anywhere in our careers where we knew leadership,
Yeah.
can make or break the moment where it can help overcome the challenge or really aggravate it. And that's why I'm really excited that we are having you all as a group of leaders on this call to address this directly. And hopefully fellow leaders in AEC industries are listening and watching right now, because I really hope, a lot of this is about them learning
Yeah.
from the expertise that you're about to share. So with that, I loaded that
Yeah.
up a little bit, but Josh, why is leadership pivotal in addressing workforce change? I'd love it if you can talk about skills and qualities that need to be present in order to effectively
Well,
address
is
that.
that all?
Yes, go. I know, but I know you're going to have a
So,
lot to share here
so
because
let
I'm
me
excited
qualify
about
it
it.
like
Yeah.
this. A few weeks ago on a training in Denver, I gave an outsider's perspective to very senior leadership, and that qualifier is that what we have at RS&H is very special. And I'm not saying that a romance novel or a Hallmark card. What we have because of the people and the way that we interact professionally to serve our clients is special in an environment that is increasingly indifferent from the way that we behave as a business. So that's a long way of saying that for me, the pull in leadership was that I wanted to be the leader that I never had. And so that allowed me the ability to adapt and grow into a place that one didn't exist until a handful of really great people recruited me into RS&H. But it also set me up to have those skills and the foundation of what my core beliefs were before I came here. So if I unpack that, it's number one, I have to love or be drawn to people, right? So their betterment, and outside of their betterment, it's the legacy that I leave with them. So what I do when I get up and the way that I end my day should be for their betterment as a means to our company's longevity, how we serve our clients, and our overall profitability. The other part of that is then how do I replicate that, right? So how do we multiply that in an environment where recruiting is so complex, where the interest and desire is low? And that's the opportunity that I spoke of. This place where through engagement and maybe seeing through a different lens on what we do, right? What we call what we do could be presented in simply just a different way, and then engage that audience that way. So for me, it's not only a challenge, but it's no different than I think the way that I found my way to RS&H. It's an opportunity to put your shoulder into something great, see where it takes us.
Yeah, I know I can relate with what you're saying too. I think you just kind of mentioned a great place to start is to say, well, what's the manager I want for
Yeah.
myself? Should I be that for other people? And how to go about doing that, right? And you really hit on some fundamentals there. Kaan, I'd like to go over to you next. I mean, you with dealing with recruiting, you're trying to bring people into a company and, leading kind of that area, knowing what Josh just shared about RS&H particularly being special, but it's really that specialness that any company should be striving for. You're talking to people who are wanting to come in, and you're trying to draw
Mhm.
them. I'd love to hear from your perspective, like leading that area of recruitment and attracting talent. What are you seeing that, is really important for you as a leader, but also what skills and qualities people are looking for as they're trying to join,
Yeah.
and trying to find a job in
Yeah,
AEC?
great question, Rachel. I mean, I think, for me, one of the things that's really important is I believe that our leadership team, it really sets the tone for the organization, how the organization is going to come up with different strategies that we want to embrace to try and attract and retain talent. I look at recruiting and retention as one complete function. And, I think leadership plays a pivotal part in that whole process. For me, it's all about that partnership that, me and our team have with our operations leaders. And then it's also about, I think leadership setting the tone and being good communicators throughout the organization. They have a big impact in, clear communication, with our internal associates. So, there's oftentimes regular meetings that are held on a weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis, where from my perspective, leadership is really being very transparent and over communicative about the state of things. How is the company performing financially? What are the trends going on? What are the different KPOs and metrics that we're doing? How are we comparing against other industries? And that's really refreshing to hear, for someone who, in my opinion, I think talent acquisition is really on the front line. We kind of, bear the name of talent acquisition, but really talent acquisition is really everybody's responsibility. And for me, again, the partnership that we have with our operational leaders is so important because each recruitment is unique and, no two recruitments are alike. Each recruitment kind of bears its own strategy and, being flexible to be able to adopt and change and react to different kinds of trends that you see is very important. So, it's about that partnership that we have with our operations leaders and being over communicative. Our team has made a commitment to, being very transparent about, recruiting activities and then those sourcing activities that we're seeing out there on the front lines, which I think can help guide some decisions from leaders and give us the direction and strategy that we like to go to obtain talent.
Yeah, I love what you said there too about it really being from the top down, and it's got to filter down through. And and then I'm gonna pivot off something you said and take this over to Michelle as well, because you said everybody's job is talent acquisition. It's everybody's job to lead in that area, and then again lead this whole notion of workforce and kind of making sure it's built for the future. Michelle, would love to hear your take on it from your role. Why is leadership so pivotal for workforce change and the skills and qualities that you feel are necessary?
Absolutely. Well, thinking back to when I started at RS&H, I have a little bit of different background than Kaan and Josh. Of I came in as a college graduate to RS&H, and I've been here for the whole 10 years of my career. And as they were both talking, I was thinking back to when I came in for my interview. One of the things that really stood out to me was some of the people interviewing me have been here 20, 30 years. And I know that it's a very changing environment. Some of my friends have moved companies several times already, but I grew up with my father working for the same company for 35 years. And, people don't stick around if the leadership isn't good. So that already, spoke volumes to what kind of company RS&H was when I was coming into it. And now getting to be here, coming up on my 10-year anniversary with RS&H, I've gotten to experience that myself. And one of the things, as Kaan was talking about, how open our leadership is and transparent. The other day, our CFO was here in our office. She isn't in the Denver area with a large national company like this. Sometimes people don't meet their executive team very often. And RS&H does a great job of bringing those leaders, on that level, but also, your leaders within your group and things like that to different offices and meeting different people. And so everybody's very open and willing to share, what it is that keeps the ship going forward. And I think that helps us in recruiting because, we're able to, have that personal connection with some of these folks that, maybe even smaller companies, they might not know their CEO or COO or someone like that. So I think that's something that makes it very unique and speaks loudly to kind of the culture that's been built here. And it's a place that I think a lot of people, when they learn that, they're very interested in, being part of that.
Every one of you just now gave some wonderful ways, but also in your answers really expounded on the fact that leadership is pivotal. I mean, we asked, why is it? What are some things that we've seen? The fact that it does come from top down. Michelle, I love what you said too about people don't stick around if the leadership's not good. You all each gave also some super great examples too. For anyone who is listening and wondering, well, we don't have, you're describing a kind of culture. I don't think we really have that at our company. Really great ways that people can maybe make improvements on that, particularly about leaders. And that's where I want to go with this next question. So can we build off of this, like giving some more examples? Can anyone share an example of where leadership made a noticeable impact as far as like workforce, maybe influencing retention and engagement? We've talked a little bit about how they make sure they visit sites, they make sure you can meet your executive in person and things like that. But I'd love to hear any other examples y'all have about how our leaders actually making a bigger difference there.
All right, I can jump into that.
Let's
So
do it.
notably is the access to our leadership, right? We can call it a lot of things, whether it's an open door policy or the idea that we're always accessible. But at any time, I have access to Kirk Fowry, barring his own busy schedule. That invitation's there personally. If you need something, he's approachable. And the same for my direct manager, Bill Brannis. And it's not in a sterilized corporate manner. It's in a vested interest in, we want to know what you have to say. We want to know what's actionable about what you're presenting. And then I get the feedback that I need from it, which a part of that is the confidence that comes from their response that I can take ownership of it and then act on it.
I love that. Thank you for that example too. That can be so key. Just feeling like there is open door, even if that's like a virtual open door, which sometimes nowadays that's the case. It may not be an actual physical door, but just that access is super important, and knowing that you're able to walk through it at any time. Michelle or Kaan, would love to hear a particular example from either of you about leadership making retention a bit easier.
Sure, I'd be happy to give you some examples of that. I mean, I talked a little bit before, and some of my answers about the partnership that my team has with leadership, and to piggyback off of what Josh said, the access to our executive leaders and leaders in this organization that are active and present in a lot of the decisions to try and retain talent is always ever present.
Yeah.
People always ask me, what are we doing differently? How can we be different than the competition? And I see examples in spades nearly every day. I can bring up another countless example where
Yeah.
an executive at RS&H that, may not have the bandwidth to normally get involved in the recruiting themselves into the recruiting process, and not just for a quick phone call. Sometimes it's getting to, take that person maybe and their spouse out to dinner or for a meal at lunch or even something like that. But these extra personal touches that, really go a long way in terms of being able to deliver talent at that organization, because the candidate experience is really heightened when you see someone of this stature being available to, take an active role in the recruitment process can really mean the difference between, a candidate who may face 3, 4, 5 different options, and they think about, hey, where do I want to work? And oftentimes our candidates are really coming away with an amazing candidate experience because the access that leadership has, and they insert themselves into that process, which I think can really make a big difference, because you see leaders investing in them and making themselves available.
Yeah.
Can really make the difference.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
So I'll
Yes,
try to give you
please.
a lead into this. It just dawned on me in Khan's response that this access is not limited to our own business unit, right? Because I work in aviation through CM, it's not in a singular fashion. I'm coupled to our infrastructure team who owns the client management. And so it is a day in, day out partnership. So that same accessibility goes through and to another business unit through Rodney Bishop and Steve and Elliot. And I consider my directs, which are the client managers directly in charge of the airports within Texas. And so the uniqueness for me as an individual is that I don't see us as two separate business units. We're the same company pulling the rope the same direction. And my job is to support them or manage up to them.
Super key. That I think too, you really do make it clear that it's all one company. Silos should not exist. It's not just up to one team on how they retain their own talent. It really is up to the whole company. When you act as a whole company, that's the key. That's the gold standard we all should be striving for. So my next question is, how can operations and recruitment teams, and we have all folks represented here on this call, how can y'all work together to future-proof that organization? We talked about, breaching silos and actually crossing the aisle over into other teams and saying, hey, it's just as important for me to say hi to you and make you feel like you're welcome here and we need you here as it is for your own team to do that. But I'd love to hear your other thoughts. And maybe you already do this. You're like, yeah, I totally can tell you how we are already working together to future-proof the org and RS&H. But tell us your secrets. How are y'all working together and making this happen together?
I don't mind jumping in first on
Let's
this
go.
one. So we have it happen on both, the project side and the hiring side, opportunities where we're working together as one company. So, being in our buildings team, there's times that, we have aviation, flat work folks that are working out at an airport, and they hear about, a project that might be coming up for buildings, and they give us a heads up, and we have the opportunity to collaborate with them and work towards, winning this project and getting future work. But the same thing happens on the hiring side. The industry is smaller than we think, even
Yeah.
though there are so many different fields you can go into. In the end, we know so many people and the connections we're making on these projects and out in the field and things like that. You never know when someone who's a civil engineer is going to run into a great project manager on some project opportunity. And then, hey, you find out they're maybe looking to make a move and they can tell us over in buildings, hey, we have an architect that we work with out at this airport. He's looking for something different. And so the same thing works, on the project side and the hiring side. So we learn about opportunities from other team members who are working in different departments
Yeah.
that we can, take advantage of.
That's a great example. Yeah, Kaan or Josh have more thoughts about that. The working together to keep everything going and keep that talent pool coming across.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to piggyback a little bit off of Michelle's answer. I mean, I've talked a lot about collaboration and the partnership that
Mm-hmm.
our team has in talent acquisition with operations, and the same thing goes through for recruiting. Oftentimes it's, our project managers or our practitioners that are working on a project, either with a joint venture partner, a sub, other people in the industry, people that they know. And they have a great way of bringing that talent forward. We've got an exceptional employee referral program, which is probably one of our greatest sources of new hires. And our team always continues to keep working with our operations leaders and people that out there in the business to make those connections. And you never know when you're going to be able to come across somebody who is highly talented that's ready to make that jump. And I think we do a great job of being at the forefront and providing the tools and resources to our operations leaders to be able to help attract that talent and bring it to RS&H.
Yeah. So I think what I would add to that is the necessity of clear communication between business units, and then the value in relationships, both internally and externally, right? So for me, that looks like the legacy piece that I mentioned before, and reeling in old relationships and just not only fostering new, and maybe we could say it's improved, but it's really more about longevity. And then I want to rope in this 2030 goal that we have as a company, and the uniqueness of forecasting into our future. So what does that revenue stream look like? And then we back into staffing from that. What does that look like today to help shape our behaviors, and what our efforts look like? And so recently that is really heavily communicating with aviation directly, but then CM broadly on where we're at today, what that looks like, and then what does that pipeline need to be for Kaan and his group. Just not a handoff to Kaan. It's how are we going to do this together as a team, and then source those people and generate all of the conversations and lunches that it really takes to start spreading the word, right? We're evangelizing for that future goal.
Wow, I have a little bit of experience working with talent acquisition teams at different companies and in a couple different industries. And I got to say, sound like you got the formula dialed in and really just providing something to aspire to for people. And I also want to mention, I promise I'm not paying Josh to perfectly load up whatever the future questions are in this podcast, but he's kind of just doing it, and it's very natural progression. This is going to take me to our kind of final question for today. And we want to end on a positive note. There's a lot of challenges out there. I think if an industry out there is not looking at the workforce and going, stuff's coming down the pipe, what are we going to do? And if they're not a bit concerned about it, current state and future state, they're not paying attention. And it's refreshing to know you are paying attention. So let's end on hope. And, Josh, you talked about the future, 2030. We're talking about the future of the AEC workforce. I'd love to hear what each of you is hopeful about for it. Like, what do you think? Hey, this is going to be great. What's coming ahead is aspirational. It's inspiring. It's going to be fabulous. So, or at least really awesome. And so I would love to hear from each of you, like, what's giving you hope? And I'll let you decide who wants to go first, but tell me what you're hopeful about.
The hope or the encouragement that comes for a future looking objective or the longevity in our company is what we're seeing today. So the rewards that can be reaped from both the internal, external relationships, but what our future workforce through job fairs and recruiting efforts at the university level. And I'll go farther. It can be at the local junior colleges where we have specific technical training that we're observing and recruiting towards, and what those sharp young minds look like as a means for us to grow and adapt in what our workforce can be, what it needs to be, and then how we adapt or how we remain pliable as leaders for that workforce, right? I see things in young students today who are graduating and that we've recruited that we didn't see 20 years ago. And it's not a pejorative, it's not negative, it's just different. And so that challenges me to adapt and to become a better leader and a better communicator for them. Right. So it's both up and downstream. And so the hope comes from, maybe it's slightly selfish, that it's challenging me to be what they need as a way of something that I needed in career past.
Really great point. Michelle, how about you? What are you hopeful for?
I'm hopeful and excited because, as Josh mentioned, our 2030 strategic plan, our industry is growing, RS&H is growing. And, with where we're heading, the people that are, starting today at RS&H, maybe at, an entry level position, their opportunity for growth and leadership is going to be exponential. Even those that are, in the mid-level professionals too, they're seeing growth already just because we have large goals to grow the company as a whole. And so that opportunity is very exciting because it's not a company that you're going to come into and be doing the same thing, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. Your opportunities are going to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Love both of those sentiments. And also, Kaan, let's bring it home with you. You're with recruitment and talent acquisition. What are you hopeful for the future of the AEC workforce?
Yeah, I mean, what gives me hope is, the resiliency of the AEC industry and the professionals. I mean, it's a resilient group. We've gone through peaks and valleys over the course of time. And, one of the things that stands out to me is I trust the leaders that we have at RS&H because, oftentimes they've guided us through challenging or, perhaps, situations that we're entering an unknown, and we bounce back every time. And, I look at things like AI. Every company is looking at like AI and how AI is going to be incorporated into the mix for, how we solve solutions. And I'm just starting to scratch the surface of it for me and my teams, but it's automating some of the routine tasks that take up a lot of time so that we can be freed up to do more productive things and really concentrate on some of the other factors like the human element. At the end of the day, we're in the consulting world, and it's a people sport. And if we can automate some of those things that take a lot of that time so we can concentrate on the relationships and building on that and delivering for clients, it gives me a lot of hope that we can leverage that technology and the future looks bright.
I'll tell you, as the person who got to kind of moderate this conversation with all of you, ending on that hope, but even the thread I noticed throughout today's discussion was people. Obviously, there's tech involved. Kaan, you just mentioned that too, and those are ways that can help, and there's innovation. There's all that, but it all came back down to people. And I think you've each really highlighted the fact that it's intention. It's when people are making the time and sacrificing their time to make another person feel like they belong there, they are welcome there, that they have access, that they matter. And so if there's anything that you're leaving us with and really leaving any of our podcast viewers or listeners with, is that this is a people action. And it really is up to you as leaders to lead and to, going back to what Josh says, be the leader that you want, that you needed and wanted. And so I really appreciate all of you providing these insights because it may feel like it's, well, duh, like this is like just a very rudiment. No, it's not. A lot of people haven't dialed this in. These muscles are not strong. And so it's great to see and hear that the RS&H muscle for leadership in your workforce and retention is very strong. So thank you so much to all of you. I just want to do a quick round robin again to thank everybody. So we've got Josh Gadsby. Thank you so much. Kaan Akcay and Michelle Price. Your time today you did take the time today to lead by being on this podcast. And who knows how many people out there are going to be like, this led me to be a better leader, and thus I'll let our retention to be better and our workforce to be better. And hopefully they can have hope for the future too. So thank you all for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having
you.
us.
Thanks, Rachel.
Of course. All right. And then I'll just wrap up a little recording. Like, make sure you find and follow the podcast wherever you love and listen to your favorite podcasts, and make sure you follow RS&H online. And I'm sure our illustrious speakers are online too, and you can follow them for some more insights. But thank you all for joining us for this yet another awesome episode of the AEC Perspectives podcast by RS&H.